Peeps, it's Angela, and today I want to share with you this little Mokume 10 that I made. And I thought the first thing that might be nice is if I showed you what colors I'm using. So these are my color recipes, and I do mix part by part. So these are the 5 colors that I've mixed up. The white and pearl is kind of a signature color for me. I use it pretty much in everything. So my almost black and my white and pearl mix, I'm going to sheet on a thin number 3 setting on my machine, and then the other 3 pieces, the 2 neutrals and the blue, are on my thickest setting. I'm going to match my thin sheet to the opposite value thicker sheet just to keep my colors going light, dark, and then I'm going to run them through my machine on the thickest setting and trim to fit. From this point, I'm going to build my stack by putting my blue color in the center between the 2 neutral sheets. I'll have a 5 colorway within this, and I do plan on making stripes around the top and the bottom of the 10. So I want my pieces to be a little bit thicker to have more distinction. I'm going to compress it a little bit to roll out the air bubbles and then cut it in half and stack it back on itself. So I end up with a stack that's about 1.5 inches or 2 inches wide by 3 inches long. And my colors are going light, dark to keep that in order. I'm just rolling it a little bit to make sure that I've got all the air compressed out of it. And now before I imprint my stack, I'm going to cut off from the short end about 12 to 15 pieces, as thin as even as I can get them, and I'll use these to make the stripes. Once I have those done, I set them to the side and start working on imprinting my stack. I like to use the circle form in a lot of my Mokume Gane work just because it's pretty versatile and it makes a nice contrasting image once you start cutting your layers off of your Mokume Gane stack. So I'm just going to start doing these circles and playing with it. I do compress it as I go along to try to keep as much air as possible out of it. And I'm just using some simple tools here, circle cutters and a pokey tool. You can use all different kinds of things, homemade tools. There's a lot of tools on the market for doing Mokume Gane imprinting. So the sky's the limit. But the circle forms just appeal to me the most. So those are the ones I come back to time and time. I'm going to compress it some more once I finished imprinting it here, and then I'm going to start taking some slices off of it. When you're pulling your slices off of a Mokume Gane stack, remember to look at both sides because they're going to be different. Once you slice away the top layer, which is always kind of not interesting, those interior slices can look really different from the top and the bottom, and just get in the habit of looking at it both ways so you can see which way it appeals to you the most. I'm going to get as many slices off of the stack as I can, and please don't use the razor like I'm using it. Well, it feels like a razor if you cut yourself with it, but your flexible blade, don't press that thumb into it like I do to stop that stack from spreading unless you're sure you have complete control, because it is dangerous. Once I've got all my slices off of it, I'm going to put it onto a sheet of 4-inch by 4-inch black clay. You could use scrap clay, but because I have used a pokey tool, some of my Mokume Gane slices might have holes in them, which is good if you're intending that and bad if you're not. Just be cognizant of that when you're making your design. I'm going to flatten these pieces just a little bit with my machine, and then I'm going to lay them out in a pleasing way up on my sheet of black. Once I have that in place, I'll run that entire sheet through my pasta machine on the thickest setting. Remember to manipulate your slices if you need to. You don't have to take them the way they are. You can trim away edges or accent certain things if you want to. Sometimes I'll even take little cutouts out of mokume gane slices and backfill those with a contrasting color just to give it more interest. This is pretty vivid though, and I like the way it's coming together, so I'm not going to manipulate it like that. Once I've got it all in place, rolling it through my machine on a thickest setting, and then I will work with that to start my circular design for the top of the tent. We're just making sure that we're getting all the air out between the mokume gane slices and the base level. That way we don't get any air bubbles in the top decoration of the tent. So I ran it through my machine in both directions, and I'm going to start with my first cut. The base lid of the tent is 4 inches in circle, so I'm going to start with a 4-inch cutter, and then I'm going to move into smaller cutters as I go down the line to make the offset circle cuts from inside the circle. The second cutter is a 2.75 inch. I'm going to take my time with lining these up just because you can only cut it once. Then I'm going to use a 1.5 inch cutter for the third cut. And then the final cut from my piece will be to match the size of a cabochon that I have that happens to be at 3/4 inch. You can make your own cabochon or adjust the size of your final hole or cutout accordingly to match whatever you're going to put into the center. I didn't get any of those lovely crystals from Tiny Pandora before I made this 10, but those would look fab in the center instead. Just saying. So I know that I want to remove the cutout, the second largest one. So I've got a 3-inch by 3-inch sheet of black on the thickest setting so that it matches. And I'm going to swap out those two pieces. The semicircle or the circle rather, that I pull out here, I'm going to use that as a template to help me make sure that I get the cutter placement right to cut out the 1.5 inch circle interior. Now I'm going to insert the black piece into the other circles, and I'm going to take my time making sure that my edges are really nice and that there's no ripples or bumps, making sure I didn't pick up a scrap piece of clay from somewhere else. And once I have that all in place, I'm going to give it some light burnishing, and I will be texturing it a little bit later. But for now, I want to get this nice and neat and get the cabochon inserted. The cabochon that I'm using has a slight beveled edge, so I'm just going to gently pull the clay back around the edge of it, and that'll keep it nice and snug. So the little circle that I removed, that cutout was too pretty. I couldn't classify it as scrap clay. So I'm going to show you what I did with it. I baked it on a bowl form because I wanted that shape. And then I made the earrings out of disc that I cut out of the remaining mokume gane sheet. It turned out pretty simple, but I love the colors together. This is a base strip about 1 inch by 10 inches long, and I'm just going to use it as a background to lay my slices of clay that I took off the stack earlier onto, and then I'm going to texture it and use my strip cutter to remove 2 strips from it, one for the top of the tin to connect with the lid design I made earlier, and then one to go around the base of the tin. While I am wrapping clay around it, I'm not completely covering it. That's not my intent here. So I am going to use a little bit of Bake and Bond or liquid clay on the back of the clay strip before I apply it to the tin. And here's why I'm going to do that. Because the tin is textured, and texture can trap air. And air bubbles are always not my friend. So I want to remove the risk of them as much as I can. And because I know that texture's there, I'm going to fill it in. This is probably a good place to say, if you're new to my videos, first, welcome. You will notice that there are extended periods of silence. There are just times where I don't think that there's anything I can verbally add that explains the process any better than what I'm showing you with the video. So your machine's not broke. Something did not happen. I have just decided to shut my mouth and let you hear nothing. This strip will go around the rim of the lid. I'll apply the Bake and Bond directly to the metal this time instead of to the clay because I'm going to completely enclose the lid and I don't have to worry about it seeping out into areas where it would be visible. Now I'm going to apply a heavy layer of the Bake and Bond and work that all the way out to the edge so I can connect the veneer to the top of the strip. Once I put the veneer on, I'm just going to work it. It's a little thick, so I've got a little bit of extra clay there if I need it. I'd like to bevel the edges and bring the strip up the side to meet the edge, and then I'll texture it. I am feeling for air bubbles as I go, and I'll push them out if I feel any up under it. And it's not uncommon for me to apply texture to things 3 or 4 times as I'm working with it because I'm heavy-handed and I leave fingerprints everywhere. Now the clay is moving nicely and I'm able to easily join the 2 edges. I'm just going to clean it up. When I'm satisfied with it, I will bake it at your manufacturer's recommended temperature, of course. I'm going to throw this one in for an hour. That's kind of my default bake time. You can overbake all you want to and not have a problem with it, but you definitely don't want to underbake anything. Okay, peeps, that is the end of this tutorial. I'd love to see what you make. And if you have any questions, you can find me on Facebook at Polymer Clay Peeps. Thanks for watching.